I'm making it right now. Cause XX Ghost.
It's the iPhone.
Oh, XX. I hope it's called. Whatever. I'm gonna call you X. I'm gonna call you X.
I can barely hear you because
I can't see all the way over here. Go right here. How'd you spend this? Are you good at this game?
So. Hello? 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 It was good. We see that.
Teach me how to play on computer.
Hello? 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 I'm at free. Free.
Is he far? Alright, so when I was a DJ, right? I got like on the game. I was playing Squad, got it. It was like so much skins. I can't even show you what I recorded it. I don't know if I can show you. I think I can show you. I think I can. I think I can. See. It was not December. It was. It gotta be November. It gotta be November or September. I just deleted Fortnite in December and I never had it. Do you want to practice? So we can just put a match? So me and my friend, right? We buried Leslie did. We buried it built around it. Now my game's starting to glitch. Bro, my game glitched. I don't want my game to glitch, bro. When you game glitch, bro, my game glitchy. I said chill. To give Fortnite rest. Where are you? You don't have one everyone? Let's have the who you think will near you? You watching YouTube? What? I'm just acting like you the bad guy we battle with.
GG's.
Take my loot. Do you hate the other glider? Additional glider? When I go, when I do it white, I hate that one because I can't see white. People can just guys, you're trying to die. Wait, let me get my loot. Let me get my loot. I got a great tactical. Bro, that ain't fair. I gotta fix my stuff.
Oh, sorry.
You cheat.
Sorry.
I gotta fix it again. Yeah. Come and find me.
Image.
Come and find me. I was worried you just died out.
You're not.
If I had the tree there, that would be better. You would never find me. You wanna play hide and go seek? And if you find me, you shoot me. Yeah.
No.
Don't shoot me yet. I'm just practicing. The trees are gonna be my target.
I gotta get mats.
Let's practice.
Well,
We need to get this stuff. We need to set a fake double. I'm trying to fake one. Tired of cheating. Come on the base where I'm at. If you can see my name tag, but you can't. The little base what I do. You need a road dog.
Hello?
Base. Where are you? Where the house at? See, stop sniping. Come on then. No, stop. Don't shoot. I gotta shoot.
What?
Here.
I
Hey. The base is right here. So the trees are our targets. So shoot every single tree that you see. Towards her. You know, we can shoot.
Hey, bro. There. Just want to build.
I shot a house down.
You want to?
What? One more?
Yeah, let's build on them.
Right
Here, right here.
there.
I'll give you a second chance. Go ahead, Emo. You want a second chance? Alright, bye-bye, dude. Alright, next contestant. Please come through. Another Christmas. Is that a tree? Alright, I think that's a tree, so, you go make it through. Haha, just kidding, you're not. Oh, you're cosplaying me. Oh, I like it, I like it. I've never seen that emo from Fashion Show, so go ahead. You can make it through, buddy. Oh, you ruined it with the emo. Bro, James, come on, man. A Christmas present. What are you gonna get? What are you gonna get? Oh, a shotgun bullet. Nice. Honestly, I can't even tell what that is. So sorry, bro. Nebula GG, man. Alright, what do you got? Backflip. Come on, backflip again for me. No, backflip again. I said backflip again. Oh, shit. Oh, that's awesome. I hate that emote. That's my least favorite emote. You. Pick up this bump. Now shoot 5 people of your choice. Anyone. Preferably the Christmas trees.
No.
Dead. GG, man. Alright, who's he gonna kill? Ooh. This guy's hiding over here. Oh no. He wants to kill you. Alright, that's good. Alright, everybody. Texan says emotes. Last person emote gets killed. That was not an emote, dude. That was not an emote. That was a little, I don't know what that's called. Texan says jump. Oh, okay. You're a little late to that. Not gonna lie. Texan says, Texan says go to circle. Texan says, if you do not fit on these 2 pyramids, you'll be killed. Go. Is everyone gonna fit? Everyone might actually fit. That's perfect. Everyone, congratulations. I was gonna edit you down, but I failed, so I'm not even gonna try. Alright, Texan says, duo. Pick a duo, guys. So when you have your duo, go behind me. If you're left out, then you'll be killed. Sorry, dude. You got left out, man. No one wanted to be your duo. Alright, first duo, guys. Texan says emote. Guys, emote. If I like it, I'll leave you alive. I like that. Whoever has a better emote. Okay, you're not emoting. Bye-bye. Alright, go behind me, dude. Go behind me. Alright, emote. Both of y'all. Whoever has the better emote wins. He has way better. Thanks for being a good sport, though. Thanks for being a good sport. Next emote. I love you, okay. I just wanted to do that. Alright, emote, guys. Better emote wins. Alright. This one's more vibey, but I like the skin. But you have a really fat head. This makes me want to... Alright. Emo wins. Oh, that was way worse. Like, I tricked my own mind. You should be dead right now. You're so lucky. I'm so sorry whoever I just killed. Alright, we're gonna continue playing Texan Says. So Texan says, get on one of these platforms. Alright, this is what we got left. Alright, everyone hit an emote though. I didn't say Texan says. Alright, Texan says jump. Texan says, first one to pick up this lightsaber dies. You didn't let me finish. It. Alright, Texan says the circle is closing in. So we need to speed this up, guys. So Texan says, choose a partner. Who's the partner, guys? Is it y'all two? Aww, I don't want to kill this guy. Or you'll be my partner. You want to be my partner? I'm sorry, man. GG. Y'all are the final 2. Now, first one to kill each other with this monogmas. He killed himself. Congratulations. You are the ultimate winner. You may kill me with that mum shot. My dad loves the lottery.
Bro.
Go back to the lobby.
Go to jackpocket.com, download the app, and start winning today.
That's kind of sad.
You know what mouse 2, mouse 1 is? Mouse 2. I only have one mouse. No. Go to locker. My locker in school?
No!
These pretending to be bad at Fortnite videos are probably my favorite videos to make because they're
The best settings on...
pretending involved. I'm just really bad. If you agree that I'm bad at Fortnite, leave a like. If you somehow think I'm good, just leave a like anyway. Hey! I feel like it's my absolute first time. Hey guys, we all know how it is. Settings are playing the game. Without the right settings, it makes it really tough to do pretty much everything. Aiming, building, editing all feel off if your sensitivity, keybind, and even graphical settings aren't right. So that's why today we're bringing you the ultimate PC settings guide out there. We made one of these videos for controller players for Season X, and this is the updated PC. Now, I know at times it may get tough for finding the right sensitivity.
Where are you?
By simply changing the settings, you can make a world of difference.
You left.
In this video, we'd like to make a small announcement. We're adding a ton of new features to Pro Guides, which include 1. Exclusive guide videos for our Pro members. This, of course, can differ from person to person. Just look at Mr. Savage. The dude's a legend with super high sensitivity. Okay, so before we get to sensitivity, we first need to establish DPI. DPI means dots per inch, and it's basically the sensitivity all the time, even out of the game. This is important to know because it's very different. 400 to 600 high end. More than that, and it's just too much. The most common DPI is 400 per pro. Some use 800 as well. As far as sensitivity, from the pro player's perspective, it's all from 0.90 players, and 0.90 to 1.1. The way most people calculate sensitivity is eDPI, which is your DPI multiplied by in-game sensitivity. And that's how we'll refer to it. It's a lot more straightforward. So if you like the swift and twitchy aim that players like Mr. Savage M have, then a really high sensitivity will fit you. The average is around 0.74. Keep this in mind, it takes a while to get consistent aim on high sensitivity. He's been playing on that for a while, so he's definitely used to it by now. Expect a pretty steep learning curve there, not to mention weeks or months on Kovacs. But if you prefer consistency, clean building, and aiming, low sensitivity will be the way to go. It makes it a lot harder to place builds in the wrong place accidentally. For example, Mongrel plays on really low sensitivity, only 47.2 eDPI, which is actually pretty crazy, but his aim and builds are actually really consistent. If your mousepad isn't big though, you might actually have a hard time making a 360 flick because you need to use so much space. This contributes to the fact Mongrel has some of the best aim and is one of the snappiest players around. Now let's head over to keybinds. Keybinds are insanely important. Without good keybinds, you won't be able to build effectively. Sometimes new keybinds can make you way better really quickly. Lots of players don't know about these, so that'll give you a huge advantage. Most players are stuck on old school keybinds and aren't daring to make the switch, but now is actually the best time to switch. So, what are good keybinds anyway? Well, good keybinds allow you to hit every vital building and editing key while keeping all your fingers on the movement keys, especially the W key, which is the most important. All your movement revolves around the W key. As for small-handed guys out there, I pray for you, it's tough. Your most important finger is the middle finger since it's what you press to move forward. Your ring and index fingers are also super important because hitting A and D are actually more crucial to proper movement than you think. If you look at many pro players, they usually use their thumb, pinky, and thumb mouse buttons to build because it frees up their index and ring fingers. A and D are critical to movement, and if you use those fingers on another keybind other than the movement keys, you won't be able to move in that direction while clicking the button which it takes up. A great example is SCN Buga, the world champion. His keybinds perfectly demonstrate keys that don't use up any of the fingers I mentioned. His wall, floor, stair, and cone are all on X, V, C, F, which all use mainly the thumb to press. There are, of course, players who use their ring and index fingers to select specific binds, but that isn't optimal. You also want your keybinds to feel comfortable for your fingers so that you don't mess up. So choose keybinds that are nearest to your W, A, S, D keys. You're going to want to play around with F and G because some people think it's hard to select, so if you're not feeling it, just try switching it to one of your build keybinds. Some other good options are C and E. If you're really a psycho, you could even try double-edit keybinds. If you've never heard of it, then it's basically editing on steroids. The biggest downside is the learning curve. It takes a really long time to get as good as players like Raider464, who's actually playing on triple edit keybinds. But that's overkill. This man is playing with 3 different edit keybinds, and it's clearly working. Just look at this guy, truly inhuman. How can you do this? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You can keep your original edit keybind as what it was before, but change the confirm edit to something else. Most people do one on their keyboard and another on their mouse, so they can really get that rhythm going. Spend about a week in creative, and it should start turning into muscle memory, but it'll be pretty tough. Remember, Booga doesn't even use it, so it's not something that you have to do. But if you're not looking to spend the next 2 weeks of your life in creative, then doing the scroll wheel edit trick might be useful for you. It's a bit of an old method, but a lot of people still aren't using it. Basically what it does is it lets you reset edits way faster by scrolling your mouse wheel twice, or one hard scroll. This gives crazy versatility with edit tricks. To use it, bind both your edit, reset edit, and confirm edit to mouse wheel down. Then try resetting an edit with it. Isn't that super easy? While you're still in the keybind section, make sure toggle targeting is off. What that does is that it removes the auto lock when you aim down sight. That gets really annoying when you're trying to fight someone and get quick shots off, so that needs to be disabled. It can really mess you up. Alright, now this might seem obvious, so don't laugh. You would be shocked by how many people don't know what they're missing out on. Turbo build. That just lets you hold down the build button and drag to build. We won't spend too much time on this, but we had to mention it just for all you newer players. Make sure to turn off auto pickup weapons too, because that gets really annoying when you're trying to pick up loot and you end up picking up a gray pistol over a scar. But auto sort consumables is actually a perfect thing to turn on, so you can spend less time organizing your loadout. Another crucial tip is auto open doors. Now, I can't stress this enough. How many times have you tried going for a wall edit and instead made a door? All the time. What auto open door will allow you to do is not lose any momentum while running forward. So whether or not you scuff an edit or Fortnite just messed you up, you'll be able to continue as normal. There are lots of different variations for keybind settings, but we found these to be the most optimal all around. Play around with it and figure out what works best for you. All the build keys are easily clickable, so you'll be able to build way more efficiently than before. Alright, now let's head over to graphics settings. It's crazy how much tweaking your graphics settings can change your performance. So many people just aren't playing on the right settings and wondering why the game isn't running well. With Fortnite's constant updates, the game just seems to get laggier more and more. So in this section, we're going to go through the optimal settings for both visibility and performance. Starting off, let's hop into the first graphics page. Whether you like seeing high quality graphics or not, it all looks the same on low versus admin. The only small difference you'll notice is when you use anti-aliasing and shadows. The downside of having epic settings is crazy frame drops. Unless you're using an RTX 2080 Ti, then you're fine, I think. First, you're going to want to cap your FPS. I know that might seem counterintuitive, but it actually helps your frames in ways you wouldn't imagine. Even though you might be getting high FPS occasionally, not capping it will result in some substantial lag spikes that make it hard also to play. Cap it at whatever the refresh rate of your monitor is, so you get the best performance. Anything higher than that, and you're just using up resources on your GPU for no reason. As for all the graphics settings you see below, turn them all down to low except for view distance, which will let you see distant objects. Keep that at medium unless your game is still really lagging. Also, make sure to keep your 3D resolution at max, or else it'll look terrible. Some known players use far view distance, but let me remind you, view distance affects terrain, not players. Yeah, don't do that. It might not look quite as good, but you'll see a drastic performance increase, so it's worth it for sure. As for brightness, it doesn't matter too much and is mostly dependent on your preference. To us, it looks best at around 75 to 85 brightness because you'll be able to see everything, but things won't get blown out. But this is also dependent on what monitor you use. Lastly, set your screen mode to full screen. You can mess around with it, but most users see much higher FPS on full screen. And turn VSync and motion blur off. Motion blur makes everything blurry when you're moving around to mimic the effect of our eyes, but it's not recommended for competitive games. Some people have even reported performance drops, so you'll want to keep that off, unless you're planning on losing track of players in build fight. Another thing which we actually mentioned in another video is to turn off background apps. This is just so important for your FPS that it has to be reiterated. Go into your Windows desktop and search background apps in the Windows search bar. Turn that off, and if you had anything running in the background, then it should turn off, and you'll see some massive FPS increases. Some antivirus programs can take up upwards of 50% of your CPU, which is just insane. For more info on this, check out our guide on how to increase FPS. It's a good one. Next up, we've got something that you might not have even heard of yet. Don't you hate when you're trying to fight someone that's in the storm, but you can't see them? Well, there's actually a fix for that. It wasn't an intended mechanic, but it seems like Epic is fine with the bug. After all, it doesn't really make sense that the player in the storm has the advantage. If you head into settings and click on that little guy inside of the circle, you'll open up the accessibility settings where there'll be a setting for colorblind mode. Set that to Deuteranope and crank it to 5. This is what most pros are using. Some others use Protanope, but we recommend using this one. Hop into a game and check it out. It's crazy how much better it is. So when it comes down to settings, they can be tricky. Nobody really wants to spend all the time it takes to configure them correctly. It's really tedious and it usually doesn't work that well, so I hope this guide helps streamline that process just a little bit more. Sometimes specific settings work better for certain people than others, so make sure that you configure it to your liking. If it did help you, then consider dropping a like on this video and subscribing, and it helps us make even more videos just like this. Let us know if we missed anything, or if you have any suggestions down below in the comments. Thanks so much, guys.
Hey guys, so for this video, I want to go back in time a little and cover the best Fortnite player from each season. At the time I'm making this video, Season 11 is literally tomorrow. So what better way to say goodbye to this chapter of Fortnite than by recapping each season and its best player. Now, before you flame me about my choices, just know this is mainly for entertainment purposes. It's really hard to declare one singular best player in a battle royale, and it's even harder not to put one player for multiple seasons. Still, I'm gonna do my best to choose a different player for each and give concrete reasoning behind who I choose. So, with that being said, let's start all the way back in Season 1 with a player not many of you know of, Mr. Grims. Grims is a Twitch streamer and YouTuber that absolutely dominated in Fortnite at its infancy. This was way back when nobody knew how to build or edit, and I mean nobody. People played Fortnite like every other battle royale at the time, meaning the skill gap was primarily aiming and positioning. Those just happen to be the two things Grims excels at. Coming into Fortnite, Grims' overall gun skill and game sense was way ahead of his time. The man was dropping 20 bombs in November of 2017. For some reference, most people, including me, hadn't even started playing yet. Meanwhile, Grims was out there wiping squads and putting on an absolute clinic. Unfortunately though, Grims was never that big of a fan of building, and he really disliked all the bugs in the game. As time progressed, he eventually stopped playing completely, only returning once every few months to check in. Still, his dominance during Season 1 will never be forgotten. Moving on to Season 2, and I think we can all agree who the best player was. TSM Myth. Myth was another player that was truly ahead of his time. Rather than relying on his raw aim and gun skill, Myth started to master building and editing before it became the norm. This was around the time when the average Season 2 player was just beginning to build walls and ramps for protection. Myth, on the other hand, was using his build strategically, getting high ground over people, making smart edits, and outplaying people without even shooting at them. Fundamental techniques like ramp rushes and scissor ramps that we all take for granted, Myth actually invented. Maybe his most infamous strategy though was just sitting and camping in a 1x1. This passive playstyle allowed him to consistently win solo games and hold the #1 spot on the leaderboard for wins. Myth did try his hand at competitive in later seasons, but he slowly gravitated towards focusing on content. Regardless, Myth will always be known as a pioneer of building and for helping to establish the competitive Fortnite scene. Next up is Ninja, who I think deserves the title of Best Fortnite Player in Season 3. Ninja was one of the first players to have the full package in terms of skill. His aim was top tier, his building was amazing at the time, and he was incredibly smart in game. What really set him apart, though, was his ability to slay out and drop high kill games with ease. I kid you not, he would push everyone he saw and would win every single fight he got into. This is a big reason he got so big on Twitch. Simply put, he did not need to sit in a tower like Myth did to farm wins. He was good enough to play aggressive and still come out on top. The craziest part is that Ninja continues to be a top player to this day. Yeah, he doesn't focus on competitive, but he was 2 points off qualifying for the World Cup. And I guarantee if he put the time in to practice and to play competitively, he could easily be the best player in the world. Now, Season 4 is where it starts to get a little harder to choose the best player. In my opinion, though, it goes to another TSM member, Hamlin's. Reason being is Hamlin's mechanics were bar none at the time, except for maybe Mongrel, but we're saving him for later. Season 4 was when people started to focus more on the speed and quickness of their builds. As a result, build battles became popular and the meta. Hamlin's was one of the fastest and smoothest builders during this time, so for obvious reasons, he excelled. On top of that, Season 4 was also when double pumping was a thing, and Hamlin's was by far one of the best double pumpers around. Those two skills combined made Hamlin's one of the scariest players to fight against, and helped him win solo scrims against other pros like Jaumak, Chap, and Myth. So, even though Hamlin's fell to the content creating dark side, I cannot think of a more talented and skilled player back in Season 4. Halfway through, and Season 5 is another difficult choice. But for the sake of having a different best player each season, my choice is Ghost Bizzle. When it comes to competitive Fortnite, Bizzle is one of the all-time greats. He found a ton of success during the summer skirmish, which of course took place in Season 5. During those 10 weeks, Bizzle was extremely consistent and placed second in 3 of them. One of them happened to be the first ever Epic-sponsored LAN event, PAX West, where Bizzle won $180,000. That launched him up the ranks and made him the highest earning pro Fortnite player at the time. The main reason I think he was the best during that time, though, was because this was the first real test for competitive players. No longer was skill based on pub stomping or speculation. It all came down to who could perform the best in tournaments, and Bizzle undoubtedly did that. So, while he hasn't made too much noise recently, his game sense alone will help him stay at the top for years to come. On to Season 6, and you're probably wondering, where the hell is Tfue? Well, here he is. Tfue, in many people's minds, is the one true GOAT. He's been a top player since the beginning of the game, and was the first person to truly outplay Ninja back in Season 3. However, the fall skirmish in Season 6 was when we really saw Tfue's full potential. Tfue won the Week 2 and Week 4 solo competitions, which were arguably the 2 hardest solo tournaments back then. On top of that, Tfue and Cloaksy won the Week 6 LAN event at TwitchCon, and brought home over $500,000. That kind of consistency in solos, duos, online, and on LAN is ridiculous for any game, let alone Fortnite. So it's hard to deny how good he is when he's on his A game. To this day, Tfue remains a top competitor and puts up a strong argument for the best player of all time. Season 7 is a toss-up between Zexro and Mr. Savage, but since I haven't been fair to my EU brethren, let's focus on Mr. Savage. Season 7 Mr. Savage was before he used a face cam, and before he was actually allowed to play in Epic tournaments. Since he was only 14, he couldn't get invited to events. The only thing he could compete in was the Open Qualifiers. In the Winter Royale Open Qualifier, Savage placed second in the hardest region in the world, and in the EU Pop-Up Cups, he consistently placed at the top, including when he set the record for the most points in a solo Pop-Up Cup. Savage's success came from a combination of his insanely fast mechanics and his ability to consistently outplay people. Every game I watched him play in seemed like a highlight reel because of how smart and 200 IQ he was. Luckily for Savage, the age restriction on competitive Fortnite was lifted months later, and he has since gone on to win nearly $200,000 in prize money. For Season 8, I'm gonna have to go with Misfits Clips. Clips was pretty much a nobody at the beginning of Season 8. He was signed by Misfits, but nobody really knew a lot about him. That was until the World Cup qualifiers came around, where Clips qualified for the World Cup 5 separate times, including 3 times for solos and 2 times for duos. The reason I think he was so good was because of how far ahead he was of the meta. Clips knew how important box fighting and turtling was becoming, so Clips went out and focused on W keying and box fighting. When you give 0 ping to the best box fighter in the world and put him up against players who are not used to getting W keying, well, Season 8 Clicks is what you get. Moving on to more recent times, and there's a clear winner for Season 9, Sen Bugha. Bugha flew under most people's radars for a majority of Season 9. We got a little glimpse of his true potential after he placed first in the first week of the World Cup qualifiers. Still though, most people labeled him as a 0 ping warrior and thought he'd choke on land. Bugha, like the animal he is, actually did the opposite and won the solo World Cup by 26 points. He nearly doubled second place in points in the most stacked and competitive event ever. That World Cup win netted him $3 million and made him the highest earning Fortnite player in the world. If somehow that's not enough to sell you on how good he is, just go and watch the kid. He's easily one of the fastest builders and editors in the world. In my mind, there's absolutely nobody you can put over him for Season 9. Season 10 though, there's one player who I've been purposely leaving out until now. FaZe Mongrel. Mongrel is another contender for the best player of all time. He's got aimbot-like aim, his building and editing are faster than any creative warriors, and he is always performing well in tournaments. We saw that especially in Season X with the Fortnite Championship Series. Mongrel's trio won 3 weeks, placed second in another 2 weeks, and won 2 cash cups as well. They didn't do too well in the finals, but to most people, Mongrel and his trio were the scariest to face. So as long as Mongrel keeps grinding and putting in as many hours as he does, I honestly think he will be the greatest Fortnite player ever. Overall, those were who I think are the best players from each season. Remember, boys, this was made for entertainment purposes. I didn't want to put Mongrel as the best player for like 6 seasons in a row, so I tried to do a different player for each. Please don't roast me too hard. But if you enjoyed the video, do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on post notifications. Thank you to everyone using code Jerian. Make sure you guys let me know if you use my code on the new Battle Pass. This way I can shout you out in the next video. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later. Hey guys, so for this video, I'm going to rank the best players from Fortnite Chapter 2. Season 11, or I guess technically Season 1, was supposed to end last week, but Epic actually extended it to the beginning of February. Still, I thought it would be cool to look back at everything that's happened and see who performed the best within that time. That means since these rankings are only going to be based on competitions from Chapter 2, not including Winter Royale duos. Lastly, remember that this is my personal opinion and for entertainment purposes only. There's a good chance you'll disagree with me and with who I pick. Just please wait until the end of the video to roast me. So with that being said, let's get into my list. My number 10 spot goes to possibly the most hated pro in all of Fortnite, Young Calculator. As much as you may dislike him from his snarky tweets, you can't deny the kid is a beast. Calc and his squad placed second in the squad FNCS finals on NA East, and third in the Week 4 qualifiers. On top of that, Calc is also an elite solo player, most notably placing fourth in the Week 5 Cash Cup and ninth just last week. Now, I will admit this spot can easily go to a bunch of people, including NRG's 8, Polar Aqua, or even Calc's teammates, TSM Zexro, and my man crush, Macwood. However, someone on Reddit ran a statistical analysis of the FNCS Grand Finals and concluded that Calc was the tournament MVP. He not only had the second most kills out of everyone, but also clutched up in nearly all their games. So, according to science, Calculator carried on NA's biggest stage, and therefore deserves this spot on my list. Coming in at number 9 is Mr. Savage. Mr. Savage definitely flew under the radar for the last season or two after he did not team with Mongrel and Benji, as well as the fact he stopped streaming tournaments. However, just because he wasn't in the spotlight does not mean he was not performing well. In solos, Savage won the Week 6 Contender Cash Cup and placed second and third in the Week 3 and 5 Platform Cash Cups, respectively. Plus, considering how much better he plays off-stream versus on-stream, I think he could have easily placed top 5 in other Cash Cups had he not tried to stream them. In squads, Savage won the $55,000 War Legend Cup, qualified for the FNCS semis, but ultimately missed out on the Grand Finals by 1 point. All in all, it's clear that Savage is not washed up like the 12-year-old Mongrel fanboys believe. The ridiculously skilled, creative, and 200 IQ Savage we all knew from Season 7 is still there and has shown exactly that this season. Moving on to the 8th best player of Chapter 2, and that is Rex. If you aren't too involved with the competitive scene, you probably haven't heard of Rex before. Main reason being is he plays on NA West. Sorry West boys, I love you guys, but you know it's true. Regardless, it's never been more evident that he is the best player in that region. Rex placed top 3 in every single squad FNCS qualifier, including winning 2 of the weeks. He also placed second in the semifinals, as well as third in the grand finals. And then maybe his most impressive achievement is his pure dominance in solos. Rex came top 5 in 5 different Cash Cups, won the Week 4 Platform Cup, and then either came top 10 or top 25 in the rest of them. That kind of consistency is absolutely insane, considering how many pros struggle in solos and say that they're RNG. So, as insane as Epic Whale and Argrim have been, it's hard to put anyone above Rex. 7th is Wakey, another fresh talent, this time from EU. If you're wondering why you never heard of him, that's because he barely posts any content at all. He doesn't really stream, and he only just started putting out YouTube videos. Trust me though, Wakey is a player you do not want to miss out on. He and his squad mates won the FNCS Grand Finals in Europe, bagging a total of $300,000. They also finished third in the Week 4 qualifiers and first in their heat. As insane as that all may seem, it's not even close to half of the story. Wakey won the Platform Cash Cup last week, placed 4th at the DreamHack Winter LAN event, above insane players like Benji, Aqua, and Savage, and then finally placed top 7 in 3 other solo cups. So, even though he was basically a nobody before Chapter 2, Wakey has quickly proven himself as one of the best players in the world. Next up, at my number 6 spot, is the fan favorite, FaZe Mongrel. As the most OG player on this list, it's pretty incredible to still see Mongrel perform well and remain as a top player. As I've tried to make clear though, this list is all about what's happened in Chapter 2, not last season or all of 2019. Wink wink. Anyway, During squads, Mongrel finished second in the FNCS Grand Finals, third in the semifinal heats, first in the Week 1 War Legends Invitational, and third in the Week 2 qualifiers. That alone makes anyone within his squad a top player and competitor. Then in solos, he wasn't quite as dominant, but was just as consistent, placing top 15 in 3 different cash cups and top 50 in almost every other one. So while many people may think Benji overshadowed him this season, just watching Mongrel for 5 minutes is enough to know he's still a god-tier player when he's not tilting and wanting to move to Somalia.
If I'm in World Cup qualifiers this happen, I promise, wallahi, I'm breaking everything in my house and moving to Somalia.
Halfway through and the 5th spot has to go to the most overlooked phase member, Dubs. While not a low-key player by any means, Dubs hasn't really streamed or made any content recently. He also hasn't outright won or destroyed in any events, but he is always at the top. In squads, Dubs was a crucial part of the only team that qualified every single week of the FNCS qualifiers. That means no other team placed top 7 in the NA East region each time. Additionally, his squad placed 3rd in the FNCS Grand Finals and 3rd in their semifinal heat. If that's not the definition of consistent, then I don't know what is. Oh, and speaking of consistency, that's the only way to describe Dubs as a solo player. In both the Platform and Contender Cash Cups, he placed top 100 10 different times and 5th just last week. So while he may not be number 1, nobody else was more consistent than Dubs. Coming in at number 4 is the high sense freak of nature, Kanata. Kanata was another no-name before Season X until he popped off with Tifu and made a name for himself. Now in Chapter 2, which is what we care about, he's continued to perform and become arguably the best box fighter in the game. To prove my point, Kanata won 3 different solo cash cups, with 2 of them being back-to-back. He also placed top 4 in 2 platform cash cups and top 25 in numerous other ones. That ties him for the total most Chapter 2 cash cup wins. Not total across all seasons, but the world total for Chapter 2. Pretty crazy, right? Well, we're not done yet. Alongside Tifu, Kanata placed 7th in the squad FNCS finals and 2nd in both the Week 3 qualifier and Team 4 semifinals. So, love him or hate him, Kanata undoubtedly has an extremely bright future in competitive Fortnite that I'm extremely excited to follow. Third on my list is the Esports Player of the Year, Sen Buga. After an absolutely crazy last 6 months, which included winning $3 million at the Fortnite World Cup, Buga has shown that his performance then was not a fluke. Even with all his newfound fame, his dedication to streaming, and traveling to different events, he's remained a top-tier solo and team player in Chapter 2. More specifically, he won the Week 4 Platform Cash Cup, came in 2nd on the same day the week before, finished top 10 3 times, and top 50 4 more times as well. During squads, he also did well as an IGL and helped his team qualify twice for the FNCS semis and finish first in their heat. All in all, while his squad may have struggled in the grand finals, you cannot deny his talent as a solo player. When Buga's in the zone, I truly don't think there's anyone better or more clutch in the world. Moving on, the second best player in the world is, in my opinion, Unknown X Army. Chapter 2 was a breakout season for Unknown when he proved that not only could he dominate in cash cups, but that he could also reign terror in custom tournaments against other pros. Unknown won 3 cash cups within the last 11 weeks alone, placed top 10 another 3 times, and placed 5th on keyboard and mouse. In case you didn't know, Unknown is a controller player that also plays mouse and keyboard, and as great as he is on both inputs, I honestly think he would have won more cups if he played them all on controller. For reference, he played 5 of them on mouse and keyboard. Anyways, in squads, his team won the FNCS Grand Finals and brought home more than $187,000 in total. So, while you may think he's just another L2 spamming W-King controller player, you couldn't be more wrong. His placements alone prove that he's one of the most skilled and talented players alive. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the best player of Fortnite Chapter 2 is without a doubt Benji Fishy. This really wasn't too big of a surprise considering how ridiculous he's been, but for those of you out of the loop, Benji won 2 solo cash cups, placed second in another 2, and top 4 in 3 more. On top of that, he placed top 11 on NA East twice. Mind you, he's from Europe. That means 90 ping can't even stop the kid from placing highly. Then, in squads, he found similar success, qualifying 3 times for the FNCS semifinals, placing 3rd in his heat, and ultimately placing 2nd in the grand finals. Outside of Unknown, nobody in the world was as dominant in both solos and squads. Now, the reason I chose Benji over Unknown simply comes down to Benji being a more well-rounded player. Not only can Benji WP and push everyone like Unknown, but he can also sit back and play for placement, which is Unknown's biggest weakness. Overall, guys, those are, in my opinion, the top 10 players of Fortnite Chapter 2. If you enjoyed the video, then do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on post notifications. Shout out to everyone using code Jerian. I really do appreciate all the support. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.
Absolutely not. Just go. Building the stairs around someone else's base is a lot faster. Yeah, but you're not winning. Here's a link from Daniel yourself in the video, Bowmaster. Love you. Thank you, Phil, man. I appreciate it, bro. You're assuming I don't know how to look at the YouTube video now, huh? Huh, bro? Okay, man. Alright, dude. Okay, dude. Yeah, what happened to the guy that threatened your life on stream? Someone got tabs on him, you know? No idea. Will you buy my mixtape? Of course I will, Lex. Of course I will. Can't wait. How are you? I forgot it's solos. Are you still alive? Yeah, I'm good, Oh, shh! You're not good, are you? Oh my god. I accidentally alt-tabbed and almost died, but I was able to get back. Okay. That circuit or whatever made me hungry as fuck. Dude, it made me hungry too, honestly.
I didn't even alt-tab. I hit the Windows button. Why did
I see a stairway being built. See, he's coming out to me. Back behind Red Arm. Oh my god, I almost died.
You're getting shot in the back, I think.
Yep.
I see him. I'll put shots on him in a second. Hit once.
And once as well.
They're both pushing. I'm in trouble.
Nice.
Nice
shot, thank you.
I said they're both pushing on this one guy.
Yeah, that's why I thought I got fucking scared.
I got minis for you.
I got 1 mini.
Alright, come give you one.
I'll always work something. It'll always work.
Bandage?
What'll always work? I have no bandages.
That's definitely not for you.
Thank you. Chilling. So you get a shotgun, Jet. I see a shotgun. We in there.
God, it's a green tactical. Thing sucks. I know it sucks. I've been using what's it called, pumps. To be honest with you. Big show freak. Thank you. Yo, awesome. 12 months from back. Here's the link. Oh, you're in that. We're in there. Yo, what's up, my nigga? Yo, what's up, dude? Better than nothing. Yo, why do you only drink to 50% armor? So the mini jellies only get you to 50% men. The ones that are like my Z, this one, only gets you to 50% armor. They'd be kind of OP if they went higher. But, yo, you're a good man, my homie. Helped keep things light and laugh-filled while I was watching my girl move out. Keep it a good word. What a big beef. Making me remember how shitty of a feeling that is, dude.
Hey. I wish I never did. I swear to God, you stupid bitch. Wishes, 'cause I'll be okay if I get one. I had one wish. My friends said hello.
Why you got your watch on the ground like that, Corey?
Oh. It
Let
fell.
me see it again. Show me your watch again. Oh, that's a La Vega Pirate watch? Hey, Corbin.
Hi.
What are you doing?
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Maybe he's talking to my cousin. Corbin, what you been eating ice cream?
No.
No? What? Maybe it's Tuesday.
I just ate cereal.
Oh, so it's dried up milk. Okay. What you playing? What you doing over there? What's that? Fortnite? No. You ready to go back to school, Corbin?
Yeah, kind of.
Really? You be bored. Aiden, you flying? Then he leaning forward. He's leaning forward like he's Michael Jackson. We sitting there, I don't even know if y'all know, we sitting there eating. It's just us to Michael Jackson with, with the white tube socks on. And I was like, what was he talking about? AJ Silver. With the black pants on and his white socks on. Who's telling him? You tell my son. Why are you dressing like Mike today? He's too hungry. He ain't came down here yet. No. The muscles. They're fussing probably because of somebody else. He don't make out somebody else. What is the girl?
You like my duck sound? My ringtone? Hey, give me help. Let's go. Aiden, just go. Oh, it broke. Because somebody built it wrong. No, my mama. You took my heart. Hold up, Corbin, I'll call you back. Yeah. Alright? Okay.